Most beautiful sky, I see how you change each day, and each day most beautiful sky, I see how you change each day, and each day remain most beautiful sky.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kate, and I'm delighted to be your worship associate this morning. We are bringing you this Sunday service again from home. Thank you for welcoming us into your home. Do take care and take advantage of online opportunities at FirstU to stay in touch during this time. If you are new to First Unitarian and would like to learn more about us, please contact us through our email at welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. Following our service at 11:30 a.m., please join us for our virtual hospitality hour. You will find the Zoom link on our website at www.firstunitarianottawa.ca or in our weekly email newsletter, the EUU. As we won't be seeing each other in person, it is more important than ever to sign up to receive the EUU and to check our Facebook page and our web page for notices and updates. Our online calendar is as full as ever. Some announcements. We look forward to welcoming the Reverend Eric Meter as our new settled minister this week. A message from our Director of Religious Education. Families are invited to walk together this Sunday at 2 p.m. The meeting spot is Mud Lake. Masks are recommended. Anusha will lead the walk. If anyone has questions, you may contact Neo at dre@firstunitarianottawa.ca. Remember to keep up with your enviro actions and enviro advocacy for August. See the EUU for details for this and for other announcements. Whatever your heritage, whatever your faith, whomever you love, and however you identify, today you are part of our spiritual community. Opening words. Earth, teach me stillness. This reading comes from the Ute, an Indigenous people that are associated mostly with the western states of Utah, Colorado, and the southwestern U.S. Earth, teach me stillness, as the grasses are stilled with light. Earth, teach me suffering, as old stones suffer with memory. Earth, teach me humility, as blossoms are humble with beginning. Earth, teach me caring, as the mother who secures her young. Earth, teach me courage, as the tree which stands all alone. Earth, teach me limitation, as the ant which crawls on the ground. Earth, teach me freedom, as the eagle which soars in the sky. Earth, teach me resignation, as the leaves which die in the fall. Earth, teach me regeneration, as the seed which rises in the spring. Earth, teach me to forget myself, as melted snow forgets its life. Earth, teach me to remember kindness, as dry fields weep with rain. Now let us sing the chalice lighting song.
Chalice, chalice, burning bright, help remind us
Sky Woman Falling. In winter, when the green earth lies resting beneath a blanket of snow, this is the time for storytelling. The storytellers begin by calling upon those who came before, who passed the stories down to us, for we are only messengers. In the beginning, there was Sky World. She fell like a maple seed pirouetting on an autumn breeze. A column of light streamed from a hole in the sky world, marking her path where only darkness had been before. It took her a long time to fall, in fear or maybe hope. She clutched a bundle tightly in her hand. Hurtling downwards, she saw only dark water below, but in that emptiness there were many eyes gazing up at the sudden shaft of light. They saw there a small object, a mere dust mote in the beam. As it grew closer, they could see that it was a woman, arms outstretched, long black hair billowing behind as she spiraled towards them. The geese nodded at one another and rose together from the water in a wave of goose music. She felt the beat of their wings as they flew beneath to break her fall. Far from the only home she had ever known, she caught her breath in the warm embrace of soft feathers as they gently carried her downwards, and so it began. The geese could not hold the woman above the water for much longer, so they called a council to decide what to do. Resting on their wings, she saw them all gather, loons, otters, swans, beavers, fish of all kinds. A great turtle floated in their midst and offered his back for her to rest upon. Gratefully, she stepped from the goose wings onto the dome of his shell. These others understood she needed land for her home and discussed how they might serve her need. The deep divers among them had heard of mud at the bottom of the water and agreed to go find some. Loon dove first, but the distance was too far, and after a long while he surfaced with nothing to show for his efforts. One by one the other animals offered to help. Otter, beaver, sturgeon, but the depth, the darkness, and the pressures were too great for even the strongest of swimmers. They returned, gasping for air with their heads ringing. Some did not return at all. Soon only little Muskrat was left, the weakest diver of all. He volunteered to go while the others looked on in doubt. His small legs flailed as he worked his way downward, and he was gone a very long time. They waited and waited for him to return, fearing the worst for their relative, and before long a stream of bubbles rose with the small limp body of the muskrat. He had given his life to aid his helpless human. But then the others noticed that his paw was tightly clenched, and when they opened it, there was a small handful of mud. Turtle said, "Here, put it on my back, and I will hold it." Sky Woman bent and spread the mud with her hands across the shell of the turtle. Moved by the extraordinary gifts of these animals, she sang in thanksgiving and began to dance, her feet caressing the earth. The land grew and grew as she danced her thanks, from the dab of mud of Turtle's back on until the whole earth was made. Not by Sky Woman alone, but from the alchemy of all the animals' gifts, coupled with her deep gratitude. Together they formed what we now know today as Turtle Island, our home. Like any good guest, Sky Woman had not come empty-handed. The bundle was still clutched in her hand. When she toppled from the hole in the sky world, she had reached out to grab onto the tree of life that grew there. In her grasp were branches, fruits and seeds of all kinds of plants. These she scattered onto the new ground and carefully tended each one until the world turned from brown to green. Sunlight streamed through the hole from the sky world, allowing the seeds to flourish. Wild grasses, flowers, trees, and medicines spread everywhere. And now the animals too had plenty to eat. Many came to live with her on Turtle Island.
This is the time in the service when we recognize people's personal joys and sorrows. We do this by placing stones in water and allowing the ripples to carry their messages out to the universe. Today I place a stone of healing for Marie, who is going through chemotherapy. And another stone in recognition that there are still hundreds of forest fires burning in Western Canada, and it's very, very devastating and dangerous to some communities. And another stone to recognize that although we are doing quite well with COVID, particularly in Ottawa, it is still with us and we still need to be careful. And one last stone for all the joys and sorrows that are kept in our hearts. We will now have a moment of silence.
Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day.
Hi, I'm Eva Berenger. Over the past year, members of our congregation have been encouraged to read the book Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. The book has been the focus of our Chalice Groups, which over the course of 12 sessions have explored just some of the chapters and themes in the book. And our Braiding and Spirituality group, which meets every other Saturday morning, has been studying the book for over 18 months now and is continuing to delve deeply into its many teachings. The author, Robin Wall Kimmerer, is a scientist with a master's in botany and a PhD in plant ecology. She is also a member of the Potawatomi Nation, and it is this combination of Indigenous wisdom and scientific knowledge that makes her teaching so powerful. For many of us, reading Braiding Sweetgrass has been a profound experience, changing how we think about nature and about our relationship to it. And of course, for us at FirstU, it brings together our current focus on climate action and our continuing focus on truth and reconciliation. This morning, several members of our Chalice Groups and Spirituality and Philosophy group are participating in the service. Suzanne Tallier has shared the story of Sky Roman from the book as a story for all ages. Lisa Boulay, Maury Prevost, and Mariella Keblusek will share their personal reflections on aspects of Braiding Sweetgrass, and Evelyn Elgar will be doing the closing reading. Before we go to the personal reflections, let's listen to Robin Wall Kimmerer herself sharing her teaching on the honorable harvest.
If I could choose just a single element of the traditional teachings that we're called to pick up, it would be the teachings of the honorable harvest, which were taught us by the plants, who give us everything that we need. It's a covenant of reciprocity between humans and the living world, a very sophisticated ethical protocol. One of the first steps of the honorable harvest is to understand that the lives that we are taking are the lives of generous beings, of sovereign beings. And in order to accept their gift, we owe them at least our attention. To care for them, we must know what they need. And at the very minimum, we should know their names. And yet, the average American can name over 100 corporate logos and 10 plants. Is it a surprise that we have accepted a political system that grants personhood to corporations and no status at all for wild rice and redwoods? The protocols for the honorable harvest are not really written down, but if they were, it would look something like this. When you get to the woods, you don't just start grabbing everything in sight. We're taught never to take the first plant that you see, and that means you'll never take the last. This is a prescription with inherent conservation value. And then if we encounter another plant, we ask permission. I've always been taught to address that plant, to introduce myself, and tell it what it is that I have come for. If you're going to take a life, you have to be personally accountable for it. I know there are places where if you talk to a plant, they think you are crazy. But in our way, it's just good manners. If you're going to ask, you have to listen for the answer. You can listen in different ways, pragmatically, intuitively. Look around, see whether those plants have enough to share. And if the answer is no, you go home. For we remember that they don't belong to us. And taking without permission is also known as stealing. And the Honorable Harvest counsels that we also take in such a way that does the least harm and in a way that benefits the growth of the plant. Use everything that you take. It's disrespectful of the life that's given to waste it. The next tenet of the honorable harvest is to share it with others, human and non. The earth has shared generously with us, so we have to model that behavior in return. And a culture of sharing, we know, is a culture of resilience. Plant gatherers often leave a spiritual gift behind, but it can also be a material gift. Weeding, caretaking, spreading seeds, helping those plants to flourish. We give songs, we give ceremony, we give our respect, we give fertilizer. Every breath that you take is a breath that was made for you by plants. On the water that you drink, whether you're in an urban setting, whether you're on a remote mountaintop, we still are recipients of those gifts. And if we take the time to be grateful, that brings us into that state of humility, of understanding that we are not at the top of a biological hierarchy, that in fact we are the younger brothers of creation.
Good morning and welcome to my garden. I'm Lisa Boulay, and this morning I'd like to share with you some of my reflections on just one of the chapters of Braiding Sweetgrass. Of all of the chapters of Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Allegiance to Gratitude continues to resonate for me. Allegiance to Gratitude asks us to consider the very nature of gratitude, reciprocity, and interdependence. That at the core of gratitude, we acknowledge that we are all part of the interdependent web of creation, which of course resonates for me as a Unitarian with our seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Robin Wall Kimmerer explores the notion of allegiance and asks the reader to consider what it would be like if we pledged allegiance to the natural world of which we are a part. She talks about gratitude and how appreciation begets abundance. Last year, several of you participated in Chalice Groups developed by Reverend Pat that explored some of the many themes of Braiding Sweetgrass. In our very first session, Reverend Pat wrote, "We start with an essential element of Braiding Sweetgrass, interdependence. Much like our UU seventh principle affirming the interdependent web of all existence, but even more so, beyond interdependence, the North American Indigenous notion that all are relatives. The plants, mountains, lakes are like family. How might I behave differently if I were to treat all natural elements like family? If I understood the complex nature of our interrelationships?" Robin Wall Kimmerer invites the reader to reimagine who we pledge allegiance to, not what we pledge allegiance to. She asks us to go deeper and see allegiance as an acknowledgement of our place in the big picture, to see that our ability to feel gratitude and thanksgiving is the very gift that Creator has bestowed on us, and that there is a purpose for this. She shares how many Indigenous peoples across the world have this in common. They are rooted in cultures of gratitude. She speaks about her Potawatomi sunrise ceremony and the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address. The Thanksgiving address is known in the Onondaga language as the words that come before all else, and it sets gratitude as the highest priority. In the Haudenosaunee Confederacy school system, children begin and end each week with a Thanksgiving address. Robin Wall Kimmerer writes, "The Thanksgiving address is at heart an invocation of gratitude, but it is also a material, scientific inventory of the natural world." Another name for the oration is Greetings and Thanks to the Natural World. As it goes forward, each element of the ecosystem is named in its turn, along with its function. It is a lesson in native science. For me, the Thanksgiving address resonates spiritually as well. The Thanksgiving address starts like this. Today, we are gathered, and when we look upon the faces around us, we see that the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. So now, let us bring our minds together as one, as we give greetings and thanks to each other as people. Now, our minds are one. Each part of the Thanksgiving address ends with the phrase, "Now our minds are one," a declaration of an individual and collective level that we understand, a declaration on an individual and collective level that we understand the gifts and abundance that are bestowed on us, a statement of individual and collective gratitude. Robin Wall Kimmerer writes, "It is said that only humans have the capacity for gratitude. This is among our gifts. For me, it is a foundation on which I can build my life from a place of awe, wonder, reverence, and action. Our gratitude compels us towards reciprocity by recognizing that we have a duty to care for all our relations. How? By being mindful of what we take and how we take it, by always leaving something behind, by only taking what we need, by never wasting what we have taken, by sharing, by minimizing harm. Reciprocity informs us that we are not in control, and as Robin Wall Kimmerer writes, the Thanksgiving address is a reminder that we cannot hear too often, that we human beings are not in charge of the world, but are subject to the same forces as all the rest of life. She asks, what would it be like to be raised on gratitude, to speak to the natural world as a member of the democracy of species, to raise a pledge of interdependence? No declarations of political loyalty are required, just a response to a repeating question. Can we agree to be grateful for all that is given? Reverend Pat asked, what if, rather than swearing allegiance to the flag or the Queen, we were to swear allegiance to the land? In closing, I'd like to leave you with this question. Might an allegiance to gratitude support us to live our seventh principle? To be able to say, now our minds are one. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maury Prevost, and I was in the same Chalice group as Lisa Boulay for studying Braiding Sweetgrass. I am recording this reflection at my home in Ottawa. Robin Wall Kimmerer is uniquely qualified to bring together the worlds of traditional Indigenous knowledge and the modern science of environmental biology. It's hard to pick out a favorite chapter in a book with such rich content, but one that appealed to my own formal education in science and mathematics is the chapter entitled The Teachings of Grass, which is written in the style of a scientific report or journal article with introduction, literature review, hypothesis, methods, results, discussion, conclusions, acknowledgments, and references cited. The scientific experiment described in this chapter was done as a thesis project by one of Kimmerer's graduate students named Laurie and involved the harvesting of sweetgrass. The concern behind the project was that sweetgrass is disappearing from its historic locales. The hypothesis of the experiment was that the method of harvesting might be a cause. Some of the basket makers would pick sweetgrass by pinching it off at the base, being careful not to disturb the roots. Others would pull it up by the roots and all. So the experiments compared the effects of the two harvesting methods with control plots of unharvested sweetgrass. The harvesting and measuring went on for 2 years. Laurie was helped by a team of student interns. Kimmerer makes good use of humor in the book, and in this case she noted, quote, "It was a little tough at first to recruit student helpers given that their task would be watching grass grow," end quote. The results of the experiment were unexpected and revealing. They demonstrated that sweetgrass thrives when picked by either method. It was the unharvested plots that did not thrive. To quote, "The sweetgrass that had not been picked or disturbed in any way was choked with dead stems, while the harvested plots were thriving. Picking sweetgrass seemed to actually stimulate growth," end quote. When you think about it, this is a property of grasses that should not be surprising. We mow lawns and cut hay to stimulate new growth. We also know that fire and free-range grazing of animals, such as buffaloes, can stimulate the healthy regrowth of grasses. There is a symbiotic relationship between the grasses and animals that harvest them, humans in the case of sweetgrass. A broader analysis done as part of the thesis research found that the places where sweetgrass is still thriving are clustered around Indigenous communities where it is harvested for basket making. In her thesis defense, Laurie impressed the scientists with the following explanation of the results. Quote, if we remove 50% of the plant biomass, the stems are released from resource competition. The stimulus of compensatory growth causes an increase in the population density and plant vigor. In the absence of disturbance, resource depletion and competition result in a loss of vigor and increased mortality. End quote. True, but I prefer the way Robin Wall Kimmerer explains it at the end of the chapter, and I'm quoting selectively here. Sweetgrass told us, sustainable harvesting can be the way we treat a plant with respect, by respectfully receiving its gift. In return, through the very act of accepting the gift, the pickers open some space, let the light come in, and with a gentle tug, bestir the dormant buds that make new grass. Our elders taught that the relationship between plants and humans must be one of balance. People can take too much and exceed the capacity of the plants to share again, and yet they also teach that we can take too little. If we allow traditions to die, relationships to fade, the land will suffer. These laws are the product of hard experience, of past mistakes, and not all plants are the same. Each has its own way of regenerating. Some, unlike sweetgrass, are easily harmed by harvest. With their tobacco and their thanks, our people say to the sweetgrass, I need you. By its renewal after picking, the grass says to the people, I need you too. Isn't this the lesson of the grass? Through reciprocity, the gift is replenished. All of our flourishing is mutual. End quotes. May we all learn from the teachings of sweetgrass.
The story of the three sisters is a story that celebrates the wisdom of both nature and the Indigenous peoples. It teaches us about reciprocity in action and how each being's unique individuality can work together to be in service to the whole. So what are the three sisters? In her book, Robin shares that after being given a simple packet of 3 seeds by a Cherokee friend, she came to understand their significance. Quote, I hold in my hand the genius of Indigenous agriculture, the 3 sisters. Together, these plants, corn, beans, and squash, feed the people, feed the land, and feed our imaginations, telling us how we might live. For thousands of years, Indigenous peoples on Turtle Island have mounded up the earth and laid these 3 seeds together in the ground, all in the same square foot of soil. The corn is the firstborn sister. Its thin seed coat is able to quickly absorb the spring rains, and soon the corn emerges from the soil in a slender spike. The corn sister's job is to grow tall and strong, so its stalk will be ready when beans, the middle sister, are ready to come forth. The beans take a while longer to emerge, and when they do, they first focus on leaf growth. But once the corn is knee-high, the beans refocus on creating a long vine. As Robin puts it, quote, a slender green string with a mission. This vine grows very quickly, and its tip can travel as much as 1 meter a day, reaching in loops in the air until it finds a corn stem or some other vertical support. Once found, the beans devote themselves to spiraling around the corn stalk, keeping pace with its height growth. Had the corn not started early, the bean vine would strangle it, but with the right timing, the corn easily carries the beans. Meanwhile, the squash or pumpkins which are the late blooming sister, finally emerge, staying close to the ground, creating broad umbrella-like leaves, which are bristly to discourage hungry caterpillars. As the squash leaves grow, they shelter the soil at the base of the corn and beans, keeping moisture in and other plants out. As these three sisters grow together over the summer, they are an object lesson in sharing resources. They share the light in beautiful symmetry of layered spacing, never interfering with each other's needs. They share the moisture in the soil, with corn focusing on the top layer of new rainfall, while bean roots dig deep in the soil for their moisture. And the squash leaves reach out beyond the corn and beans for their own access to water. And through an amazing collaboration between the beans and the bacteria in the soil, the beans are able to transform nitrogen in the atmosphere into usable nutrients needed by all three sisters. As Robin says, quote, "There are layers and layers of reciprocity in this garden between the bean and the bacterium, the bean and the corn and the squash, and ultimately with the people. The beauty of this partnership is that each plant does what it does in order to increase its own growth. But as individuals flourish, so does the whole." The Three Sisters reminds us of one of the basic teachings of our people. The most important thing each of us can know is our unique gift and how to use it in the world. In order for the whole to flourish, each of us has to be strong in who we are and carry our gifts with conviction so they can be shared with others. This is what a community can become when its members understand and share their gifts, end quote. Today, we have important lessons to draw from the story of the Three Sisters about the importance of relationship, both as a congregation and as global citizens. Alone, bean is just a vine, and squash is just an oversized leaf. Only when standing together with the corn does the whole emerge that transcends the individual. Not only do they each grow so much more abundantly when grown together, but eaten together, they give the gift of a balanced diet. The Three Sisters teach us that all gifts are multiplied in relationship. That is the power and the beauty of working together as a congregation in collective action to address the great needs of our community and the globe. May each of us proudly share our unique gifts as we deepen our relationship with ourselves and each other. May we live in the spirit of reciprocity and gratitude, with respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are all a part.
My blood doth rise in the roots of yon oak. Her
words before we take the offering from Braiding Sweetgrass, page 384. Let us hold a giveaway for Mother Earth. Spread our blankets out for her and pile them high with gifts of our own making. Imagine the books, the paintings, the poems, the clever machines, the compassionate acts, the transcendent ideas, the perfect tools, the fierce defense of all that has been given. Gifts of the mind, hands, heart, voice, and vision, all offered up on behalf of the earth. Whatever our gift, we are called to give it and to dance for the renewal of the world in return for the privilege of breath. May it be so. This is the time in our service that we usually accept the offering. You may go to our website or contact our finance manager to find out how you might keep up with your pledge or make a donation during these times. We give these gifts freely. We receive these gifts gratefully. We dedicate these gifts to the work of the congregation, serving human wholeness, caring for the planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, loving one another.
Our closing words for today's service comes from the late poet, author, and activist Richard Wagamese. I'm learning that happiness is an emotion that's a result of circumstances. Joy, though, is a spiritual engagement with the world based on gratitude. It's not the big things that make me grateful and bring me joy. It's more the glory of the small. A touch, a smile, a kind word spoken or received, that first morning hug, the sound of friends talking in our home, the quiet that surrounds prayer, the smell of sacred medicines burning, sunlight on my face, the sounds of birds, and walking mindfully, each footfall planted humbly on the ground.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Could vida spari de justiça, tenurimur, cielo patuam, source de vie, viens vers moi, viens vers moi.
Go in peace, go in love, go in joy, and may all be well.
We give thanks to the Dalbergia Nation. We are grateful for the gift of resonant wood. We give thanks to those who care for, protect, and sustain Dalbergia tree life. In humble exchange, we offer this music with gratitude and respect.